Okay, so in the way that Zendaya goes on the red carpet wearing tennis-themed outfits to remind you about challengers, you're probably wondering why every time you see Chris Pine lately, he looks like the Big Lebowski. It's to remind you of his new movie, Poolman.
Poolman, the star-studded directorial debut of Chris Pine. He stars in this. He directed it. He co-wrote it. This came out at Toronto last fall, and it got just destroyed critically, which made me want to watch it that much more. Because if it were just like a shrug, like,
Sure.
but I've got to see it. Like an F cinema score, when a movie gets that, it's always more interesting to me. I'm not saying this did or will, but
Right.
of that ilk.
Of course.
The interesting disaster,
Yeah.
is a subgenre unto itself. So come subscribe because we're here for all your indie oddities like Pool Man, and that is definitely what this is.
I'm Darren Barrenman. I'm a pool man. I love Los Angeles, and I'm fighting to make it a better place.
Chris Pine stars as the titular pool man, although there's really only one pool that he cleans, and it is at the kitschy mid-century Tahitian Tiki. Is it an apartment complex or a hotel? I think it's an apartment complex.
It's hard to say. I thought maybe it was a motel that people just lived at for long periods of time. But look, he's not a pools man.
He's a singular pool man.
That's
He is
right.
singular in his vision. He is named Darren Barrenman, or DB, as he refers to himself. And he is just this collection of idiosyncrasies and quirks. He lives in a trailer next to the pool, has this very methodical ritual about what he wears and what he listens to, and his Discman with his like mesh fingerless gloves, and he has the same thing every day. He writes letters to Aaron Brockovich, which serves as like the film's kind of running narration of his interior monologue. He types them out on an actual typewriter. He goes to every LA City Council meeting. He has all these ideas about trolleys and bus schedules. He's a man out of time. For a while, I couldn't figure out what year this movie took place because I thought it was like maybe the 90s as an homage to Lebowski, because he's very much a Lebowski-ish figure, at least externally, right?
Sure.
He lacks the dude's zen, but he is scruffy and just like a California LA weirdo. Annette Bening and Danny DeVito, who like manage the place and are his only friends apparently. Their names are Jack and Diane for some reason. She drives like a 90s looking Mercedes with the older California plates on it. Anyway, he gets caught up in true LA noir style in some scandal involving water. And if this sounds familiar to you, it's because this is its own riff on Chinatown. And if you didn't know that, just by the word water, they literally watched Chinatown on VHS tape, which also is a weird anachronistic thing. They talk about plot points in Chinatown. They literally have lunch in Chinatown.
And they reenact scenes from Chinatown. That scene at the horse track with the car, which, for all I know, is the actual car from Chinatown. Like they're not
Santa Anita.
They're not hiding any of this.
Right. But you know what? If you're gonna pay tribute to one of the great film noirs in Los Angeles, like you better be good or at least halfway decent. This is so scattered. This is so shaggy. All of the quirks of this guy never amount to a recognizable human being. It's all he is. And it's never as funny or endearing as he's aiming for here. It is an incredible waste of the supporting cast between Annette Bening, Danny DeVito, DeWanda Wise, John Ortiz,
Jennifer Jason Leigh.
But what I realized pretty early on in watching this is that, yes, it is the writing, and the writing is terrible, but it's also the editing. There's a really distracting kind of cutting back and forth in an early scene between Chris Pine and Jennifer Jason Leigh. They've just had sex in his trailer, and it cuts between them in a way that's totally counterintuitive and undermines whatever kind of banter, whatever kind of rhythm he's trying to establish here. And over again, there are these kinds of like inconsistencies in just the rhythm of it. And maybe the average person might not recognize that, but I think you internalize that when something is off like that, when it's putting you in a weird jarring space like that. And so it's like it has this overhead shot of the two of them, and then it cuts to them on the side, and then it cuts to them on the other side, and in the middle of conversation in weird places it cuts. And that happens a lot. There's a scene where he's in Annette Bening and Danny DeVito's apartment, and he's up and he's walking around and he's ranting, and then all of a sudden he's sitting on the couch. Like there's stuff like that all the time where it's cut in a way that's just really off. This is just a mess.
Yeah, I mean, like I admire Chris Pine's love of Los Angeles and it's one of those movies where you can see what they're going for. Like you can just it's sitting there on a shelf waiting and no one can reach it, you know? So like you see the effort to be funny, but it's never really funny. You see the performers trying to kind of carve these eccentric characters out, but they don't have anything but eccentricity to hold them up. And then yeah, the Chinatown stuff, it's like they lay it on so thick, and it's like, movie, take Chinatown's name out of your mouth, because you are not anywhere close. It's the kind of thing where I was watching and thinking like, I wish Chris Pine had made like a video essay or a coffee table book or something else that would allow him to express his love for these different things about the city and about other movies. But it's not coming together here. You know, there's a fun moment where he goes to see Golden Girls live with, you know, the cast, including, you know, full disclosure, friends of mine, Sam Pancake and Jackie Beat. But oh man, it doesn't cohere in any way. And by the end, I just got more and more annoyed as it was going along. And I just thought, this is one of those classic examples of the old Gene Siskel line. Like a movie about this cast having lunch is more interesting than anything that actually happens in this movie. And you know, Ray Wise is in this. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but again, I can see what he's shooting for. Dave and I were saying this is like if the Americana at Brand memes in an Instagram account were a person, it would be this character that Chris Pine is playing, because he loves LA so much and he's so tuned into like the intricacies about, you know, the how the city works, but at the same time is entirely clueless about how anything works because the character is such a dim bulb. And yeah,
and he's annoying, and he's on screen nearly the entire time. And like, I don't know why anybody has affection for him, because he's annoying as hell. He's grating. He's singular in his obsessions in a way that is super off-putting. And he's also like not the most attuned emotionally to other people. Like Jason Leigh, as his girlfriend, keeps trying to talk to him about things of substance, and he's just scatterbrained. And then later on in the film, when they have a scene that tries to go for real emotion, it just falls flat because they haven't laid the groundwork for this at all. It comes absolutely out of nowhere. And there are some geography things that I have, of course, had quibbles with. They get takeout from Pie and Burger, which is in Pasadena, but they're sitting on a bench eating it in Chinatown. They drove from Pasadena to Chinatown to eat their takeout on a bench just to be in Chinatown. Stephen Tobolowsky is a city councilman. He's walking through Chinatown to get to City Hall. No, there's no reason to go there. Anyway, I have a lot of questions. But yeah,
especially for a movie that's this attuned to specific LA stuff. And if you don't live here, I don't know what you're going to get out of this movie, because it is so up its own LA-ness that, like, I don't know if that was an unintentional pun. I don't know what anybody who doesn't live here is going to get out of it. And I do live here and I still didn't get anything out of it.
I will say this. I like some of the costume design and production design, because there's some very lavish Art Deco interiors. DeWanda Wise dresses like a 40s femme fatale. And then she has also got a nose ring, and it takes place now because there are pop culture references to things like Bones and Brene Brown. And that's jarring too. But I like the way she looks and the kind of sultry persona she brings. So as you say, there are pieces here that you can see what he's aiming for, but they never come together.
And as we were talking about before, there's a legitimately like heartfelt scene that takes place that constitutes a spoiler, so we won't get too into it. But it is this sudden moment of like, oh, these are human beings having a real conversation about something that's real and not just do we think this movie was like largely improvised? Is that why the scenes go on so long and are so erratic, or was this written this way? I can't even decide.
I don't know. What's your number?
I mean, I'm going to say a 4 because, like, here's the thing. Chris Pine, no one can say this is like a cynical cash grab. He clearly means it. This movie comes from a heartfelt place, and I admire that he's making a movie that is pretty aggressively not commercial in a lot of ways. So at least, like, no one can accuse him of selling out, but also no one can accuse him of making a movie that works, because this doesn't work.
I'm going to say it too, and that is really just primarily for the production design and costume design. So Poolman, if you're also curious, is in theaters this weekend.